is the night of January 5th, 2021. Wanjiku Njoroge, a dedicated nurse and mother, is in her kitchen preparing supper for her family. The comforting aroma of food fills the air, a stark contrast to the chilling events about to unfold. Suddenly, the lights go out. At first, she thinks it's just another blackout, a common occurrence. She reaches for her phone to use the flashlight, and that's when she sees it. A small fire burning outside. Confused, uneasy, she walks towards the door to check where it's coming from. The night is too quiet, an unnatural silence that screams danger. Immediately her feet touch the compound, a shadow detaches itself from the darkness. Before she can react, a heavy metal bar crashes against her skull. She fights to stay standing, and that's when the blades come in. Over and over, and within minutes, Wanjiku Njoroge is gone. But the horror doesn't end there, because after silencing her, the attacker walks into the house. And what happens next will turn this quiet night into a nightmare no one inside could have ever imagined. When the morning came, 4 bodies, brutally murdered, lay scattered across the compound and within the house. But this wasn't a random act of violence. It was a meticulously planned, cold-blooded massacre orchestrated by one of their own. The search for the killer led them not to a hardened criminal, but to a 22-year-old university student. The prime suspect was someone the family knew, loved, and trusted. He was their own son, Lawrence Simon Warunge. 5 years on, this case still drags in silence. Files gather dust, hearings stall, but the questions remain pressing, painful, unanswered. Why would a young man turn against his own family with such unimaginable violence? Was it madness, manipulation, trauma, or something else, something our society still refuses to confront? On today's episode of Silenced, we take a close look at this case. My name is Yusuf, and before we go any further, please don't forget to subscribe. One night in Kiambu, a young man murdered 5 people. His victims were not strangers. They were his father, his mother, his younger brother, his cousin, and a family worker. After killing them, he showered, ate dinner, watched television, and slept in his father's bed. The killer was not a criminal. He was a 22-year-old university student. A family home surrounded by a high wall should be a place of safety, a sanctuary, but for the Warunge family in Kiambaa, Kiambu County, that home became something else entirely. On the night of the 5th of January 2021, 4 members of the family were brutally murdered inside that compound. The victims were Nicholas Njoroge Warunge, his wife Wanjiku Njoroge, their son Christian Njenga, and their adopted nephew Maxwell Njenga. Before entering the house, the killer had already murdered a 5th victim, the family's construction worker James Kinyanjui Wamba. What investigators found that morning was a scene of extreme violence, a level of brutality that left even seasoned detectives shaken. At first, police considered several possibilities: a robbery gone wrong, a professional hit, or a deep personal vendetta. But within hours, one detail changed everything. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing of value had been stolen. The killer had walked into that compound freely, which meant one thing: the killer was someone the family knew. The morning after the murders, neighbors sensed something was wrong. The compound was unusually quiet. Phone calls to the family went unanswered. Even the dogs, usually loud and alert, were silent. Police were eventually called. What they found inside the compound shocked them. Near the entrance lay the body of Nicholas Njoroge, covered in blood and suffering multiple stab wounds. Inside the house, the rest of the victims were discovered in different rooms. There were signs of struggle and fear of a long night of a merciless attack.
Mwili ya mzee tumeikuta hapo karibu kwa mlango ya kuingia, na huko mbele kwake kuna geti na haikuwa imevunjwa, lakini tukiangalia kwa madirisha tumeona mwili ya bibi yake na mtoto mmoja.
But the first body had actually been discovered earlier. In the neighboring compound lay James Kinyanjui, the construction worker. Police had been called earlier that same night to collect his body. While they were there, they tried to contact Nicholas and his wife, but when the calls went unanswered and even the knocks on the gate weren't responded to, the officers had no legal grounds to enter the house. So, they assumed the whole family was asleep and they left. Hours later, the full horror inside the compound will finally be discovered. But the biggest clue in the entire investigation was not inside the house. It was someone who wasn't there at all. Investigators quickly confirmed something unusual. 3 of the family's children had survived. 2 daughters had returned to school just one day before the killings. But the eldest son, Lawrence Warunge, was missing. The 22-year-old IT student at Mount Kenya University could not be reached. His sisters were easily traceable, but Lawrence, nothing. His phone had been active earlier that day, but on the night of the murders, it suddenly went silent. Meanwhile, detectives examined the compound more closely. There were no broken doors, no forced windows, no damaged locks. Whoever entered that home had done so comfortably, almost as if they belonged there. Suddenly, Lawrence's disappearance became deeply suspicious. If he was safe, why hadn't he contacted anyone? And if he was running, what exactly was he running from? And more importantly, was he running alone? Detectives made a decision: find Lawrence and the entire case might unravel. So they placed his phone number under surveillance. The moment it switched on, they will know exactly where he was. 2 days passed in total silence. Then, on the 3rd day, it happened. The first signal appeared briefly in Maimahiu near Naivasha. Then the phone went silent again. Later, another signal appeared in Thika, and then, finally, Lower Kabete. Detectives moved quickly. Unmarked police vehicles left the station quietly. No sirens, no flashing lights, just quiet coordination. But when officers finally located Lawrence, the scene was not what they expected. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't running. He was sitting outside a small rental house, calm, almost detached, as if he had been expecting them. And that moment confirmed something disturbing. Lawrence Warunge was not simply a missing witness. But what investigators will soon learn was even more disturbing. This was not a crime of sudden anger. It had been planned, rehearsed, prepared for months. And what Lawrence admitted next will become one of the most chilling confessions in Kenyan criminal history. Inside the interrogation room, detectives expected resistance, shock, denial, maybe even tears. Instead, Lawrence remained calm, almost eerily calm. Investigators placed photographs from the crime scene on the table. His father, his mother, his brother, he barely reacted. But when detectives placed a photograph of James Kinyanjui, something briefly changed. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Investigators noticed it immediately, and slowly, Lawrence began talking. He told the detectives the murders had been planned weeks in advance. He believed his family had mistreated him for years. In his mind, what he was about to do was divine justice. He admitted he had spent months imagining how the murders will happen. He even practiced. At one point, he bought a female doll and cut off its head as a rehearsal. He also claimed he had been influenced by the fictional assassin Villanelle from the television series Killing Eve. Before deciding to use a knife, Lawrence had tried several times to kill his family using carbon monoxide poisoning. Each attempt failed. Eventually, he decided to carry out the killings himself. But he will not do it alone. He involved his girlfriend, Sarah Mudhoni. Sarah came from a difficult background. She had struggled to survive selling charcoal, eggs, and smokies. At the time, she was living in Jikaze IDP camp in Mai Mahiu. Lawrence promised her a better life. He told her that once certain obstacles were removed, they would live peacefully together. He convinced her to buy a 9-inch metallic knife in Thika. But she did not know what he intended to do. On the day of the murders, Lawrence bought several items in Thika: a pair of trousers, a jacket, women's shoes, wigs, and the doll he used for rehearsal. From Thika, he traveled to Nairobi CBD. There, he visited Uhuru Park and later Holy Family Basilica. Concerned that he might be searched before entering the church, he left his belongings in a supermarket under a luggage tag before entering. Later that afternoon, at around 4 p.m., he boarded a matatu to Limuru. From there, he transferred to another matatu that took him home to Wangunyu in Kiambaa. When he arrived, he encountered the construction worker, James Kinyanjui. He asked him for a metal bar without explaining why. Later, Lawrence attacked him from behind. He struck him repeatedly on the head. When the worker did not die immediately, Lawrence slit his throat. Investigators later confirmed that blood spatter patterns at the scene matched this account. Lawrence remained near that scene until around 8 p.m. when he saw his father being dropped home in a taxi. He then entered the compound through the back gate. Inside the compound, he saw his mother in the kitchen. He went and cut the electricity at the main switch. Then he poured paraffin on a paper bag and set it on fire outside the kitchen door. When his mother stepped outside to investigate, he struck her on the head with the metal bar. A younger brother rushed toward the noise. He was also attacked. Their father, who had been upstairs drinking beer, eventually came downstairs after hearing the commotion. When he saw his son holding a knife, he ran back upstairs. In desperation, he jumped from the bedroom balcony. But he survived the fall. Lawrence followed him outside. He stabbed him repeatedly, then slit his throat. Investigators later confirmed that Nicholas Njoroge had been stabbed 34 times. After killing his father, Lawrence returned to the house. He moved from room to room, searching for the remaining children. He killed Maxwell Njenga, his cousin. Finally, he found Christian Njenga hiding under his bed. The boy begged for his life. Lawrence ignored the pleas. He stabbed him repeatedly, then slit his throat. After killing 5 people, Lawrence did something investigators still struggle to explain. He took a shower, put on clean clothes, and ate the very dinner his mother had been cooking when he killed her. He then watched television and then went to sleep in his father's bed. At around 4 a.m., he woke up and left the house. He traveled to Mai Mahiu, where he disposed of the knife and his blood-stained clothes in a pit latrine at Jikaze IDP camp. Soon after his arrest, the court ordered psychiatric evaluations at Mathare. Doctors reported signs of serious mental instability. There were claims he heard voices, claims he believed his family was plotting against him, claims of paranoia and hallucinations. But not everyone believed the diagnosis. Some questioned whether he was mentally ill or manipulating the system, and that debate continues today. 5 years later, the case still moves slowly through the courts. Hearings have been postponed repeatedly. Mental evaluations have been reviewed and revisited. And the families of the victims are still waiting for justice. For many Kenyans, the case has faded from public attention. But for those who lost loved ones, the silence has never ended. The girlfriend, Sarah Muthoni, who was arrested together with Lawrence Warunge, was later acquitted, and she became a witness for the state. Today, the Warunge home still stands, quiet, empty, a reminder that sometimes the greatest danger does not come from strangers. Sometimes it grows silently, inside the very homes we trust the most. And until the courts finally deliver justice, one question still haunts this case. What truly happened inside the mind of Lawrence Warunge?